Hey there, friends. I'm Scott Wakefield, lead pastor at First Christian Church here in Greene County, and I am with
Kris Carlson.
And we're going to have a
Coffee Convo.
Coffee Convos. Glad you're here tonight, Kris. Coffee Convos is an opportunity to have some good coffee, or in this case, water.
I drink water.
We're doing water.
The water convo. Doesn't really roll off the tongue, does it?
Not as much. Not as well. It's not as alliterative.
No.
So Coffee Convos is an opportunity to have some good coffee or water with some good friends and to hear the story of God's work in their lives. So we're glad you're with us this evening. And this is live. So feel free to jump in the comments, let us know you're here, and give us some good questions for Kris as we go along, whether it's about, who he is, what he does, things you'd like to know, or stuff that piggybacks off the stuff we're talking about. So why don't we start by having you just give us a little bit of personal history. Who are you? Where'd you come from? How'd you get to today? All that good stuff, family history, youth, spouse, kids, hobbies, all of those things.
Okay.
Or any of those things. It's up to you.
Okay, I'll give you a quick background. I am a preacher's kid, and I come from a long line of people who have served in ministry, both my grandfathers, many of my aunts and uncles, many other folk in my family. Been part of independent Christian churches for as long as we can trace back. How
long is that? How long can you trace back?
Back early Restoration movement. Maybe second Great Awakening. No, it does go
Paris,
way back.
Kentucky.
Yeah, that's right. We were at Cane Run.
Your ancestors were the ones whose hair went like that and flipped and made the whipping sound.
That was them.
Yeah, that was them. Yeah.
No, so I've been in. I consider Northeast Tennessee to be home, and I've been in it most of my life. We moved here. If you had to ask where I'm from originally, it's Southern Illinois, but I don't remember that. It was a long time ago.
Now, you weren't born there. Were you born there?
So when I was born, my parents were in a place called Cave Rock, which is the very, very bottom of the state. My dad preached at a place called First Christian Church of Cave Rock, Illinois, which is across from Paducah, Kentucky. You have to take a ferry even now to get there.
Oh, really?
From Paducah.
I know it was across the river. I didn't know it was that.
Yeah, it's kind of remote. And anyway, I was born in Paducah because that's where the nearest hospital was. Yeah. So I was born in a state I never lived in.
Nice.
Which is interesting history. Yeah. Probably born at the same hospital as Stephen Curtis Chapman.
Of course. You come from a long line of Christians.
I do. Well, it would appear that way. But anyway, we came to Northeast Tennessee in about 1988. It was actually, I can tell you, it was December 28th, 1988. Because I just remember that date, and it's been instilled into me along the way.
You are so weird.
Yeah, I am.
You remember the exact date?
I remember the day, actually.
Why do you remember that?
We had been in West Virginia.
Other than the fact that you are strange.
Yeah, it's strange. We had been in West Virginia previously to that, and that's the first place I remember living. And we came right after my sister was born. My dad brought us to the town I actually grew up in. I grew up in Sullivan County. Yeah. I grew up in Bluff City because my dad preached at First Christian Church of Bluff City for many, many years. Right. And then we've stayed in this area subsequently as we moved on from that church into other aspects of life. Long story short, I went to ETSU. Yep. Always knew I wanted to do music. Didn't always think I wanted to do ministry.
What did you want to do, perhaps, in addition to or instead of?
Well, I wanted to be a studio musician. I didn't want to be like a big rock star or anything like that. I wanted to work and play, be somebody that was hired, a hired hand that a lot of those guys can do rather well, especially in the Nashville scene and a lot of bigger cities. However, I was part of the campus house at ETSU, which we support. And because of all of that experience, I'm not someone who graduated college in 4 years. I was around, did some part-time years toward the end. I ended up working at a church part-time that was a campus house supporting church. Wound up teaching for a place called Trinity Art Center for about 6-7 years. Wonderful place in Johnson City, which is a Christian arts school. And then I wound up working at another church after working for that. I worked for Walnut Christian Church in Johnson City for a while. Then I was at First Christian Church in Johnson City as a part-time staffer there. And then I came here in 2013. And when I came here, I was not married, had not met my wife. Didn't meet her until a year or two after I came here. and then we got married in 2017. And now we have, and I brought visual aids. And you see, this is where I show the picture.
Show the camera.
And see, that's right here.
There we go.
Actually, they came with the frame. I just put my face in.
Yeah, there you go.
So this is my wife Angie, wonderful, wonderful woman. This is our daughter Lilia and Savannah.
Yes.
And we have another on the way. This was taken.
Do.
I feel like Fred Rogers in this moment. Like I've been like showing the pictures. Well, friends, here we are. This is me. Can you say Lilia? Yeah, Lilia. And how does that make you feel when you? Well, let's talk about that.
Wow.
I've been rehearsing that whole day.
I was going to say, here's the sad thing, people. Here's what you need to know about Kris. He planned that whole thing. Right. He planned that
roll
whole
right out,
thing.
isn't it?
No. Now, of course, hold that up again.
Yeah.
Friends, if you're watching through that camera right there, that's the grace of God right there.
Absolutely.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Angie and I met through FCC, and she didn't start coming here to date the worship leader. She was here on her own and in the community, and I was late to get married. I didn't get married until I was 32. Angie's a few years younger than I am,
Mm-hmm.
and then we've been married almost 4 years. Then we subsequently had 2 wonderful little girls, and we have another child on the way who is due in the middle of August sometime, is the best we know at this point.
Yeah.
So
Good stuff.
That is very exciting. And she put this framed picture together for me for Christmas, so I
that's
have
cool.
it.
Yeah.
And it's a lovely thing. But I thought I'd bring that. Visual aids.
Good.
So that's
stuff.
my background. And I've worked here at First Christian since, well, I guess I started officially in June of 2013.
Okay.
So I've been here going on 8 years.
Yeah, almost 8.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. We already have questions.
Oh, boy.
We already have questions that have come in.
Is that typical?
It says, thanks to Kris and Angie for your service to FCC. We love y'all. If you could play music with 2 musicians for a day, who would they be and why? You are our worship and music guy. You're a musician, in case we hadn't covered that there. If you could play music with 2 musicians for a day, who would they be and why?
Well,
I got a couple guesses.
2 names that come to mind. They're not Christian artists, but 2 names that come to mind just for their skill. I'd love to spend a day playing with James Taylor.
I knew that would be one of them. I figured that would be one of them.
And I'd love to play with Billy Joel. And the list goes on.
I wondered if that was the other. I had those are my top 2.
Yeah, those. And I've seen both of them in concert in recent years. Actually, I got to do that. That was cool. So
you and your dad went to
see Billy
Joel, right?
And I saw James was in Knoxville.
James, and James are like.
Oh yeah,
first name basis.
I know his first name.
The basis on which you know him is his first name.
Right, so we can say that.
Yes, right.
No, I saw him in 2015 at Thompson Bowling, so that was a cool thing. Another one, if you had to go down that list, it would be Weird Al would be the next one.
That was my next one.
Yeah.
I had the top 3 in mind right then.
I've seen Al 4 times over the last 20 years in concert. Been with one friend to see him 3 times, and he's actually, Al's a cool guy. He's family-friendly entertainment, really smart, has a great band. He's a Christian. Many people don't realize that. He actually attends a non-instrumental Church of Christ. That's his background. So he's got some connection to our experience of churches a little bit. Too far removed. But yeah, I've seen Al, and actually we hung out at, my friend Ben and I hung out at Al's tour bus until he came out one time in Charleston and got his autograph and met him. So that was a great guy.
You are a funny bird.
I am a funny bird.
So, oh my, questions galore.
And it's just pouring in.
Questions galore.
Yeah.
Let's go through some of these quickly here.
Okay.
And then instrument you cannot play.
One that I'd like to, that I do not play, is the harp. I would love to play the harp.
Really?
It's
My mom plays harp.
Yeah, I think I knew that. It's complicated.
It is.
It's like the sound. It's like all the parts of a piano without the keys, and you have to figure out how to play it.
Right.
And you have all these pedals you hit that set, I guess, different diatonic settings of strings. Diatonic refers to keys.
Yes.
That gives you a different combination that and I don't know how it works, so I'd love to learn that.
Yeah. Another good question here. What was the moment you knew you loved Angie? Says Angie's sister. What was the moment you knew you loved Angie?
The very first moment.
Oh.
I know it was Our first date.
Really?
For sure. Yeah, I would say it was our first date. Because, yeah, we just immediately.
You knew?
Yeah. Which was August I believe that's August the 30th, 2016.
What'd you guys do? I can't remember.
I took her to the finest restaurant in Johnson City, Gourmet and Company.
Oh, yes.
Set the bar high.
Yeah, you did.
And now the bar is down here, so I trip over it.
And now it's like Ryan's and Applebee's.
If there was a Ryan's, there is no Ryan's, sadly. But no, I took her to Gourmet and Company,
yeah.
place we have to make reservations and wear a jacket.
Oh, it's a lovely place.
Yeah, so I took her there, and because we knew we were going to be, this was going to be the first date of many. Let's put it that way. We had gotten to know each other at this point, very comfortable.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Good stuff. What's the strangest instrument you have played? And are you good at it?
No.
And can you play it on stage Sunday for us? And then you're going to have to ask. Then you have to guess which of our staff members asked that question. And here it is. What's the strangest instrument? Are you good at it? And can you play it on stage Sunday for us?
Well, the strangest instrument that I played, the one that I probably play that most people don't, the one I play that most people don't realize that I play. And I've not kept up with it because I didn't own one. I played it in high school band. I was tuba section leader.
Tuba?
Yeah, and I actually had played the different brass.
Shut your face.
Yes.
Tuba?
I had played the different brass instruments. I'd been a trumpet player.
You're so mysterious. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've told me that.
The trumpet, and then our band director wanted me to move to low brass because you just read a different clef and with a different mouthpiece. And I played baritone, which was probably actually where I was most comfortable of the brass stuff. It's the same finger combinations, but you read a different clef, and you actually read a little different pattern of notes is one's a B flat instrument, one's a C.
Okay.
So trumpet, when you play a C, it's actually a B flat. It sounds what actually sounds as a B flat, but I can't play tuba. I didn't own one. I used the one we had at my high school. But for my senior year, I was the section leader, and I actually had the lungs for it, and that's 50 pounds ago. So you can imagine what that was like. You can imagine what that was like when I played the tuba.
And which staff member do you think asked that question?
Tommy.
Tyson.
Hey.
I wish you could see the girls watch you on the screen, babe. It's worth it to push bedtime for this.
Hi, kids.
That's good. I bet it is. How much money would you have to be given to never play guitar again?
Oh man, I don't.
How much money would you have to be given?
Somebody got a problem? This is a strange ransom note we have here. I don't know. I don't know that there is a figure. I mean, it's something I take a lot of joy in.
So there's no price.
It would have to be.
It would have to set your family for life.
Yeah, and generations upon generations to come.
Which is an interesting thing because it's part of your livelihood.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of an interesting.
So it's an interesting question.
It's like being bribed out of.
Got some layers there.
Yeah.
What's your favorite place you have visited on vacation?
Oh, well, now this is one that.
And then we're going to get into some Kris personalities.
Yeah, so the place I like to go a lot, and of course I didn't go this last year. COVID messed up a lot of things. I'm not even sure they were open much this last year, but I am a roller coaster fanatic. So, and my wife isn't, and we've gone once since we were married to this place. I used to go as a single guy for many, many years because I was single all through my 20s, and I'd take different my friends and we'd go. Is Cedar Point at Sandusky, Ohio, which is the roller coaster capital of the world.
Yes, it is.
And we're talking like 40 coasters on this one little peninsula.
Yeah,
and
by far the largest concentration of quality coasters.
And they're all world records. All the world records are in that one park. So.
Yeah. Talk to us about music and color.
So I have a thing called synesthesia, and synesthesia is just a brain term that basically means that and I'm not a neurologist, so I can't give you all the terminology, but as I understand it, for the most part, the way that the brain and senses work is that the places where the senses operate don't normally cross each other a whole lot. Synesthesia has to do with two areas of your brain where senses are controlled actually meeting and crossing.
Synesthetic.
Right, synesthetic.
Yeah.
So this can be any of the five senses combined. For musicians, the one that's important that you can have is something which is, remember there's a name for this particular kind, but it's basically that I hear color. when I hear notes. I have perfect pitch, but what it means for me, and not everybody who has perfect pitch is synesthetic. This is important to understand.
Yeah.
Because I actually know another person who has perfect pitch who is not synesthetic.
Yes, I've met a couple folks who.
Yeah. And I don't know how they hear it. I couldn't. So basically, synesthesia is for me. Let me explain it this way. When I first started learning to play guitar when I was about 10 years old, I taught myself. I had always heard music as color. Okay, and my dad, who's a pretty good musician, he gave me a guitar, and I'm learning. I was listening to songs, country music, 3-4 chord songs on the radio, and playing it back very quickly, getting the progression. Now, the way I'd worked it out in my 11-year-old mind was that I had been hearing these colors. All of a sudden, I learned chords, okay, and G, C, D, E minor, whatever it was, and I applied the colors that I've been hearing
to the chords.
To the note, because that's what they were. And this is why I was so quick at it. It was because I was already doing this without having the terminology.
Do you think a lot of people who are pretty good at quickly recounting songs in that kind of way, are a large percentage of those synesthetic?
No.
Okay.
Synesthesia, I'm coming to find out, there are a number of, now, it's not like crazy rare. Like perfect pitch isn't crazy rare. I think it's like the stats are like 1 in 100,000 people.
Yeah.
So you're going to meet several in our state.
Sure.
Now, they're not all synesthetics, or synesthetes, I think is the name. They're not all synesthetic.
Gene Prophet used to be perfect pitch.
Oh, yes, that's right. I think I did know that.
Yeah.
So to give you the other side of that story, I'm learning, my dad is hearing that I don't know this song from the other room, and he came in and he said, how are you doing that so quickly? Because I picked up on guitar.
So this is the story of how you kind of discovered
how we discovered it was. And it took me a number of years to find out what it actually, the term was.
Sure.
And
it's going to take us a lot of years to figure out terms for you, Kris.
That's right. That's okay. So I explained to him as an 11-year-old would, I thought this is what everybody did because I only knew what I heard.
Sure.
And he said, no, most people don't do that. And then when I got to college, to a music history class, I learned about some composers who were synesthetic, and this is what this is called. Now, the colors themselves are irrelevant. I applied whatever colors, whatever letter I wanted to when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But the fact that you do it, because the colors vary from person to person.
I was going to say, and I don't think they're the same from person to person, right?
It has to do with personality, I think, more than anything else. But
so are your colors very dark and morose, or are they bright and colorful?
No, they're bright and colorful. Now, it depends. Like, some keys are darker, like just because that's what I hear. Like
which key?
B is black, but B flat is brown. So, I mean, like, they vary. And then, you have individual notes, and of course, chords are made up of many notes. So I hear different colors, but I also hear tonality that is in a color based on the key note. So G has, since G is white for me, even though I hear different notes within the key of G, there's a white hue over the whole key, which is a tonality issue.
So when you're hearing someone else play or sing something, you can tell, you can see and sense that pitchiness and not just hear it. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's and people ask me, what's it like, can you teach it? Well, you can teach relative pitch. I don't think you can teach perfect pitch because nobody taught me. And so, and the evidence shows you can't.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Now, there are a number of things that could be connected to. So, one of my favorite movies, this will give you some insight into who I am, and people I love
Here we go.
Is a movie called The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, which is a short story that's like a 4-hour movie, with Brad Pitt. And I saw it when it came out in theater.
An interesting movie.
Yeah, he ages backward.
Yeah.
And at the end of the movie, they say his the only other person in his life who knows, because he keeps reinventing himself, so nobody knows his story because he'd be studied. And the woman that's in his life throughout the whole movie says to him, "What's it like aging in reverse?" And he says, "Can't really say. I only see through my own eyes." So when people ask me what's it like to do this, I only hear through my own ears. I only see through my own eyes.
Right.
I can describe what it's like. I can't tell you what it's not like. And so,
right, you only know what you know.
Yeah, and so that's when I heard him say that line, I thought that's what this is for me. It's something I can't explain. I can explain how it works, but I can't explain what it's like to have it to somebody who does. And it's just a weird,
Sure. So let's talk about Kris Carlson personality. There are a number of other questions we're going to get to here soon. Yeah. So we got plenty of fodder for our whole time here. Are you early or late?
Well, that depends on what you mean. I am not a morning person.
No.
But I am not. But I'm on time to things.
Yeah, no, you're not a late person.
No.
I just was thinking throughout the day. Are you more early morning or late?
I gain a lot
night?
more energy. I'm a bit of a night owl in terms of I want to be up all night working on projects. I don't stay up all night, but I don't get to bed before 11 most nights.
Really?
And it depends. There's some on Saturday night if we have to be at Afton early.
Yeah.
I go to bed earlier. But
how much of that has changed through your life, if any?
I used to be more of a morning person.
Really?
The older I've gotten, I was never like crazy. So I'm not much of a breakfast eater, but I'm not much of a morning person now. I think it's just age. I think I just gotten, and my sleep patterns. I'm not one that goes to bed at a real good early time.
So that changes with life and circumstances and responsibilities and age. Yeah.
At 26, I was way more of a morning person. At 36, I'm a lot less more.
So you're more dinner than breakfast.
Oh yeah. Now, in terms of are you early or late, meaning are you early to things or late to things? I'm crazy early to things.
Yeah, you're definitely.
I will show up an hour and a half before it starts.
Mr. Punctual.
Yeah.
Where's that come from?
A variety of things. Some stuff from my background. I was in a program, in a choral program. I was in a big choir at ETSU with a wonderful director who
was hardcore about
being, and musicians have to be on time. There's equipment to set up. So it was trained into me. And so
my dad was always that way.
Yeah.
Always that way. When it came to those kinds of professional things.
Yeah.
Now, for us as a family, we were late to everything. But for the professional things of his life and his duties, he was on time and made sure everybody else was.
And when I have to take guitars in and tune them and warm up my voice and all that stuff, I want to be an hour and a half before it starts.
Yeah, because there's a lot of prep and things to make sure you've done, and there will inevitably be other folks' prep that will need some help and filling in vacuums for other things to make sure things are in place when it's time to start the service or to sing the song. Yeah.
Well, where else that plays out is that I want to be at the movies 15 minutes before the previews start. So, because I'm like, well, first of all, movies cost a fortune to go to, and
and you think that strengthens the
experience. I gotta have time to get my popcorn, sit down. I'm like, I'm here for the whole.
So that feels like
thing.
More bang for your buck if you're there early.
Yeah.
For me, it's the total opposite.
Yeah, whereas I love my wife, but she's like, we can go while the previews are going. I'm like, no, we have to be there on time.
I want to go as the previews are ending.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to go and sit down as the movie's starting. I don't even want that in between where it's thanks for coming to da-da-da and exits and da-da-da.
Yeah.
That would increase my...
I finished my first bag of popcorn by the time the movie starts. Sad thing.
So are you a thinker or a feeler?
I've never been able to answer this clearly.
It's a hard one, I think.
There are some questions that I can answer pretty clearly. It depends on the situation. I think I've thought for a long time I was more of a thinker, but I'm not somebody that but I'm also a fast processor, which is usually those two don't go together. So, usually thinkers are slow processors. Mm-hmm. I'm not a feeler in the sense that emotions guide me, but I think it depends on the situation.
You think it does?
Yeah, so I think I must be more of a thinker than a feeler. Obviously, the way I answered that dictates that I am a thinker. But it depends.
Are you a fighter or a peacemaker?
Peacemaker.
Where's that come from?
Background, ministry family.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And, yeah.
Are you more silly or are you more serious?
Silly, by all means. I can be serious and can have a really serious conversation with somebody.
Sure.
But I kind of I don't view my role as class clown. I wasn't that growing up. But I do view my role as punchline, is part of what I'm supposed to be doing in the group dynamic, is I bring the punchline. So I come prepared. And I'm not that witty. I rehearse every morning when I get out. I talk in front of the mirror. I rehearse conversations I think I'm going to have that day, and I know I'm going to have that day, and I work it all out. And now it sound like I'm insane.
Yes,
but,
yes. Keep going, please. Keep talking, Kris.
For the first 6 months we were married, Angie was like, "Who are you talking to in there?" And and literally, when you're single and you have roommate stuff for such a long time, you don't nobody's seen you do this, and so she was like, "Is this something you do?" I was like, "Absolutely, it's something I do." And I never had to explain it to anybody before. Once again, I only see through my own eyes. So I'm much more silly than I am serious. I try not to be inappropriate with it. I don't want to be like silly when it's not needed, but I feel like it's needed more than most people probably realize. So funny's good.
Absolutely. Nothing wrong with that. Do you know any personality profile things? Introvert, extrovert, Myers-Briggs, DISC profile?
Yeah, I'm definitely an extrovert.
Okay.
That's for sure.
And what does that mean?
Means that I want to be around people.
Yeah.
I gain energy from being around people. It doesn't drain me to be around people.
Right.
I don't have to go off into the corner afterwards and go, all right, I got to get my energy back by being alone.
Right.
Now, I enjoy some alone time. At
Sure.
the end of the day, there are things I want to do when I get home that are not like I want to sit and read, I want to watch something, whatever it is. But my energy is based on working around others, particularly like in my work life. I'll go to somebody else's office and sit there because I want to be where they are. Even if I have nothing, and they're like, excuse me?
Oh, I hear there are people over there.
If I hear laughter down the hall, and so
you are drawn like a
moth to a flame.
Exactly.
Yes. And so it took me, because I was...
Me too. I'm definitely that way.
Yeah. And in terms of personality, I'm a total extrovert.
Yeah.
I love people.
Would you say Angie is?
Angie's probably more introverted. In fact, she said as much to me.
Okay. Yeah.
Now she's not particularly shy or anything. She speaks up and
Sure.
and is very engaging.
Sure.
But when you're married to me, the comparison's going to be you're an introvert because I'm pretty much on the crazy end of it. So.
You are similar to me in that regard.
Yeah, we are similar.
Yeah. Okay, so tell us something about you most people likely don't know.
I was thinking about a couple of things because we looked over these questions a little bit earlier today, and I was thinking about a couple of things. Let's see. I had something, and I should have written it down. Come back to that one.
Okay.
Because I know it'll come to me in a minute.
We got a few questions.
Yeah.
So let me ask them. One question says, we're going to save one of them till the end because it's a good one. How do you select worship songs for each Sunday?
Oh, okay. Boy, I've had different bullet-pointed lists of things that are sort of priorities over the years.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
And some principles that you...
Yeah, so a couple of things I think that I would say. First of all, I have a time of prayer before I work on any service. Mm-hmm. for a few minutes. I read over whatever the passage is. Mm-hmm. Some of these things aren't necessarily in order. It depends on what the situation is. But I look over whatever the service I'm planning in is. So, like for instance, if I know so far out what your sermon's going to be, or whoever's preaching that Sunday, whether it's our campus pastors, I start with their passage and I read over it a few times. And then I look at kind of the whole series a little bit. Obviously, liturgical season comes into play here if we're in the middle of Advent, Christmas,
sure.
if we're pointing toward Easter, if there's something else going on. Also, I have a list of songs we do at FCC regularly, and I consult that. And so, I don't make my pool all the songs in the world. I make them, what does our congregation know and engage with well, and keep a running list of that.
It's important to have a repertoire so that our people have a sense of, like, there's an FCC repertoire. And
took me a while to get there.
Know it. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because at first I wanted to just pick from the whole world because there's a song that's this scripture exactly. Yeah. Well, we don't know it, and that's we only sing it this one day.
Yep.
And so I had to learn that. And then I would also say, there are a number of other factors here. Flow of how much time in the service I have. Can I do a 6-minute song here? Does it need to be shorter? Will it work if it's shorter?
Right.
Then you get down to the nitty-gritty and the practical.
Some of those things more dictate the kind of thing you're choosing to do than just what song would fit well thematically, or the lyrics are good, or this would be a good place for this song emotionally. There are a lot more factors, like you've just named, that are part of that process.
And one of the things I would say there too is, so I also tend to, I think about key flow, and I can change keys to songs if I need to. I think about range. I think about, there was something else I was going to say.
The voices of those singing.
Right. Yeah, I'm a big proponent of we have to put things in singable keys, and some songs aren't congregational.
And most worship songs nowadays are written in a ridiculously high key.
I will lower them in ways that, you probably don't see some worship leaders do. No criticism to them, but I'm so much about congregational singing that I want it in a singable key, and most people don't want to scream.
Well, and one thing we say here is that the congregation's voices are the number one instrument for our worship.
Yeah, that's a principle that we operate by.
And it's a corollary of that.
The other thing that for me, and I've had to get to, especially as we've been doing longer series and stuff, my tendency, and you know this about me working with me, is to want to find songs that fit exactly that sermon, exactly that week. And that's not necessarily what we want to do all the time. Sometimes it's obvious. If there's a passage and that song repeats that passage 5 times, we should probably do it. But trying to get to more of a meta-narrative of the series feel, whereas my tendency is to look at this week, this window, and say, what's he talking about? Let's point exactly at that.
Yeah.
But thinking more meta-narratively has been what I'm trying to do.
Like theming for the series.
Right. So there are...
And not just every week's.
Right.
Yeah.
There are a number of factors.
Yeah. Well, and one of the reasons for that, because you've just named half a dozen things that are factors. And one of the reasons for what you just talked about with theming for the series is people are not here every single week.
No.
People are here every other-ish, maybe. And so we have to repeat things like songs so that it becomes a part of the repertoire so that they know it. Otherwise, it's lost on them.
I thought of the thing that most people don't know.
Yeah.
So there are a number of things, but this is an interesting one for you literary folk out there. My great-grandmother, who was born in 1900, who is from Asheville. My mom's people are from Asheville, North Carolina.
My mom's people.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're from the Swannanoa Inn, which is toward Black Mountain, which is the Eastern Inn. She was born in 1900, died in like 1997. She lived a long time. I knew her into my teen years. I found out later, this may be interesting to some of you folk, that she was first cousins with the famous author from Asheville, Thomas Wolfe. And so that puts us pretty closely related.
I knew that.
Yeah, pretty close.
I've heard you talk about some of that.
So I'm pretty closely related to him. He had some, you can look up his family tree. Now, it was on her father's side, and I don't think her father was around much. They were born the same year. He died very young, like in his 30s.
Really?
They were born in, died maybe like 38. But I took an Appalachian literature class at ETSU, and we read some of his stuff, and I was like, we're like pretty close cousins. Now, she didn't know him very well. It was on the side of her family. I think they may have met a time or two. And she lived life that was twice as long as his or more. Yeah. And but I'm pretty closely related to the author Thomas Wolfe through my great-grandmother. Her name was Donna Penland. We called her Mama Donnie because she was alive when many other grandparents were alive. So she had
What's the last name again?
Penland.
Penland.
Well, that was her maiden name. Her name was actually Donna Gregg. That was her married name. And because she was alive when there were a number of other family members of grandparental age alive, she had a matriarchal title, which was Mama Donnie, and lived on her own until way late in life too. So, yeah.
Got a bunch of other questions here. Talk about mini golf. 30 seconds.
Love putt-putt, and I have done all of the putt-putts in the Gatlinburg Pigeon Forge area. On one trip when I was single, I went with a friend. We took like vacation days, went down there, did a number of things, but we actually did like all 13 over the course of like 3 days. And actually, no, we did all 17. There were 17. There may be more now, and we did them all. Yep. And had a blast over the course of about 3 days.
There are that many?
There may be more now. You have to remember that 3 of those are in one place. There's the Ripley's that has 3 courses.
Sure.
They were the best courses.
That many courses.
Right. Those were the best, by the way.
Yeah. The Ripley ones were?
Yeah, they were the best.
There's only one more official putt-putt left in Kingsport.
I think that one still exists.
Bristol? I think it's
the old school brand putt-putt.
Yeah, the old school brand. Yeah. At least around here.
That I know of.
Yeah. You already sort of answered this question, but if you have anything else in mind, are there things about worship ministry that people don't understand?
Well,
and I think you covered a lot of those things. And one of the things I was going to say, we were talking about all the many factors, is one thing that is particularly, that you are particularly good at, is thinking about how, because people sort of assume music and art forms and ministry, we just go with what works best from the music itself. Like being a purist about the form itself, but actually there are a billion factors, and you've got to be practical.
Yeah.
And one thing you are about all that process is fairly practical.
Yeah.
Which is lovely. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the nice compliment. I think what would surprise people is, especially, I mean, this was true before we were multi-site, how much administrative work there is to do, and how much of that is actually people management stuff.
Tons of it. Yeah.
You know, like the artsy parts of my job, which I love,
Sure.
Are eclipsed by the people management, shepherding of people through the ministry, that kind of stuff. I would say 80% of what I do is either, this would surprise people, administrative or people management. And those two kind of are the same thing, but one is kind of an arm of the other.
Yeah. The old word administer means to come alongside, administer with, alongside people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which doesn't sound all that exciting, but actually is very exciting, especially if you're an extrovert. And that's what the work is. It's people.
It's the whole work. Yeah, it's the whole thing.
Yeah, I think people think, you play and sing, you do, what do you do? You know?
Yeah, how many folks, if you know off the top of your head-ish, how many folks are under your care in that ministry and regularly are a part of it in terms of serving?
We have a number of folk who've been out during COVID, but last I looked at the list in terms of people we have who in the last year or so have been part of it regularly, it's probably, because you have to consider things like when we just did our Christmas candlelight, I had a number of brass and string people who don't always play, but they did, because we did a small orchestra for that. I would say in the neighborhood of 50 to 60 people. That's that's probably about right. Yeah. Now they're not all in regular rotation right now, and some of that's COVID, but some of it is actually just some of them serve seasonally because we don't always use that instrument.
A couple times a year,
But I would say 50 to 60, and that would surprise, I think, a lot of folk.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Let's see, crepes or pancakes?
Oh, pancakes.
Savory or sweet?
I would say savory.
I'm not sure what fast or slow means, but fast or slow?
This is a little bit like, are you fast, slow process? I want to move through things quickly.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Generally, I think that's probably true for you.
That's true for me.
That's also because you sit in front of the mirror and you practice.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
You've got answers. You've thought things through.
1,000 things.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
You and I are similar in that way. So let's talk about leadership and ministry. What makes for a good leader from your experience, in your mind?
Well, there are like basically four things, and this is like this list isn't comprehensive, and it's not, and these aren't necessarily even in the right order, you know. But there are four things I think of. One is somebody that leads by example.
Okay.
Now, for me, that example has to be at the feet of Jesus, because the kind of leadership we're usually always talking about is church leadership, ministry leadership.
Sure.
So leading by example, that's leading at the feet of Jesus. I think the next thing that I would list is somebody who is a good listener, because they have to be willing to hear a lot of things and take it in and really hear what people have to say, because you don't.
You mean the subtext?
Yes.
And maybe not what they're saying, but what they're really trying to say?
Both.
Or,
yeah, I think you have to hear what they're saying and what they don't know they're saying.
Right.
And the other thing that I would say out of that is, and this is one where people will say, but you know what, this is proven to be more true than I think people want it to be. You have to be strong. You have to be a strong personality in some ways that are going to Doesn't mean you have to be a jerk all the time, but you end up having to be way more than most people want you to have.
Sure.
You have to be firm.
What makes you say that? What are some examples?
Well, that wasn't my bent early on, and it's still not. Like I'm an extrovert, which means that I tend toward people pleasing on the negative side.
Yeah.
When you have to be very principled and you have to lead by principle,
Right.
and people aren't going to always like what those principles are, and so you need to be strong as a leader, and that's what that. I think the fourth thing I would list, and this all kind of interplays. There aren't separate things. Somebody that's humble. We don't want to follow people who aren't humble.
Yeah.
We just don't.
You were pretty prepared and definitive about that. And the first thing you said in our entire conversation about you is you're a preacher's kid.
Mm-hmm.
How does that inform that answer? Entirely.
Entirely.
What did you see about that? Those things in your dad.
I saw those in my dad. He is those things.
Uh-huh.
Both of my grandfathers were those things at varying levels. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses, but
Sure.
The various other people in my life who have been in ministry, who are family and otherwise, but especially family, have been those things. My mom's been in ministry of different forms and has those things. I have uncles and aunts who fall into that category.
Mm-hmm.
So that's from, but it's not just from familial experience. It's from the last 10 years of doing some kind of vocational, some kind of ministry as a job career.
Yeah.
And because I wouldn't have told you those things as definitively 10 years ago, and I may not even have listed some of those things.
Yeah. Which would you not have listed, do you think, 10 years ago?
That you
have
said,
to be model, listener. You said strong, strength,
yeah.
and humble.
Probably the strong, because it's taken me a while to realize, and through going through our regen program especially, that the people pleaser part of that is what ends up playing out if you're not. And you don't wind up leading people toward what Jesus actually said. You don't wind up leading principled, I guess, if you're not strong. And it doesn't mean you're going to have to be all the time, but you're going to have to have more uncomfortable conversations than you ever thought you would.
And if you're a people pleaser and that drives you enough, you're not going to be about disciple making for the sake of the person's good as much as you think you are.
And we're not just talking about calling somebody out of sin. Right. Clearly there's that.
Sure.
We're talking about, like, this is why we do what we do, and being able to explain, defend, and really lead them through that.
It's a whole range of things.
Yeah, it's a gamut of things.
Yeah. Which of those four, let's say they're an example, let's call that model. Model, listener, strong, and humble. Which of those four do you think you have the easiest time with, are most gifted in, and which do you have the hardest time?
I would think of the four of them, probably listener is probably the one that is, because I like people and I want to hear what they have to say.
You are good at, there may be a conversation going on, a bunch of things, and you are tracking with what people are saying, and you're quickly categorizing and understanding them and responding to the various things, even if they're different.
Yeah.
Quickly and in a way that shows that you have been listening to the heart of the things that people are saying, and you're also trying to account for what you know of that person at the same time. That's something that I've noticed pretty decently.
Yeah,
that's good.
And then listing the other things, the biggest weakness, and it's getting better, is the strong, firm, lead by principle. Because I don't want to ruffle feathers and upset folk and have to have the hard conversation where I say, actually, you know what, we're not going to do that, or, this doesn't come up a lot, but we're not going to be able to talk to people that way. Like whatever it is, where you have to deal with a group dynamic or whatever, which is the hard stuff.
Yeah.
And I hope, and the other two things I'm hesitant to even rate myself on. I want to follow
humble.
Jesus. I'm so Christ-like,
and I'm such an example.
Yeah. I just hope I'm giving into those more and more every day.
Sure.
That's
good.
Yeah.
We do have one or two more that we'll ask here at the end. What is a challenge? What's a difficult challenge you've had to overcome in life? And how's it made you stronger? What did you learn? How can you see that God was in it all along?
There are a number of things. There are two particular instances, and they're pretty recent. One, I went through a horrible period of clinical depression and anxiety about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that went on for a long time, and went through counseling, went through regen, and I wasn't married. My support system was wonderful. It was family. It was family here at church, the church family as well. That was a tough period, and it was I could give you my whole region testimony, but I won't. Let's just say that was a tough period.
Yeah.
The other period that is similar to that, and I'm thankful for having had all that happen, was I lost my sister about 3 years ago.
Uh-huh.
Well, it's going on 3 years ago. She died in a drunk driving accident. Somebody hit her.
Yep.
And it was sudden, and she was gone. She was my younger sister, and that is the closest person in my life to ever die, much less die suddenly. And so that's got all kinds of stuff attached to it. That's hard. And but boy, if I hadn't been through the stuff the years before that, I don't know where I'd have been when that happened, because that was very dark.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I remember it clearly. How do you think those experiences have equipped you for not just church ministry here in the local body, but being a father and husband? How do you think those have prepared you and strengthened you for your calling as minister and husband and father?
Well, you can't be. This gets into the lead by example stuff a little bit. You can't take someone somewhere you haven't been. So if you haven't had to go through healing, and I did in both of those cases, you don't know how to walk somebody else through it. Now, I'm no expert, I'm no trained counselor, but I know how to go through hard stuff and lean on Christ through it. And in ways that are about like looking into His Word and showing me, looking into God's Word and showing me what I should be doing and what I shouldn't.
Yeah.
So it's that whole you can't take people where you haven't been thing. You have to go through the valley to understand what you can't necessarily go through their valley for them,
right?
But you can go through a valley and come out and say, well, here's what happened to me, and let me tell you how God saw me through it. Yeah.
Good stuff. A couple more questions here, and let's see. One thing I learned about Kris by being on staff was that he was proactive and always thinking ahead. I really enjoyed working with him, even though we weren't in the same area of ministry. That was from Abby. It's nice. Okay. So what is God currently teaching you, revealing about Himself to you lately?
Well, the older I get, the more I realize that I know a lot less than I thought, which it sounds a little like a plateau kind of thing to say, but it's true. You have kids. I didn't have kids till I was 33. And so, it's not crazy a late start, but it's a later start than a lot of my friends, a lot of my peers. And boy, there's a whole lot I did not know. Like just how early the sin nature shows itself, how they imitate everything you do. So be careful.
Yes, indeed.
And my oldest is 2, almost 3. And she's starting to repeat things she hears us say, and Lilia and Savannah are fascinated with every move I make when I'm home, and will imitate everything I do. So the influence you have over children, your own children, is frightening. like you realize how quickly every habit you have, good or bad, they see, and they can't filter that, so they're going to emulate what you do.
Yeah, imitation, reflecting you. We're made in the image of God. All of that operates in those kinds of ways. So what is that experience of seeing that, them imitating you, them sort of living in your image in that sense? What does all that tell you about your relationship with God and about Him, His character, nature? How's that forming you? Your relationship with God?
It's reminding me of the many, many ways in which I haven't imitated and followed him closely enough.
Okay.
You watch how closely your own children imitate, follow you, and
you have a sense of the sort of a fear of that, the dangers involved, the responsibility that comes with that. Yeah.
Especially when they're as little as they are right now. Yeah. Because they're learning how the world works. That I should have been. I wish, because most of the things I see that they're doing are things that, I mean, there's good things, but the things I don't like about me, or have had others point out aren't good, and so I should be walking a whole lot closer with him, and should have been earlier on in life, in ways that would make me more ready for what they need to see. So you see your deficits, and you have to deal with that.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah.
At first you begin to think, man, this marriage thing sure teaches me about how not amazing I am. And then you realize, and then this parenting thing sure makes me realize that even more. And, it pushes you to a dependency on relationship with God and a life that's centered on the gospel in ways that are far deeper than you could possibly imagine that would be the case before.
Oh, yeah.
What are you excited or encouraged about?
You know, I'm excited about my family. We're growing. We're having another. We're being fruitful and multiplying.
Being fruitful and multiplying. And you knew that was coming next. You knew I was going to say that.
I did. I'm ready. I know. Yeah. I'm excited about my family. Yeah. I'm excited about what this chapter of my life is bringing in ways that I could never have foreseen or understood until it was here. I'm excited about what's going on at FCC. I'm excited that we push through the mission of the gospel through hard times like COVID, and continue to say the most important thing we do is proclaim the gospel. It's not all the other stuff. Everything points to what God's word says. It should point to what God's word says, and how that changes lives.
Yeah.
And that we're doing that through difficult times like COVID. COVID is one of those.
Sure.
It's difficult in ways that we've never experienced before.
Right.
But it's also difficult in ways that we are familiar with. Because
so that context has pressed the importance of the main stuff.
Yeah, because people are designed to be around other people.
Yeah.
God didn't design us to be on our own.
No.
And COVID has shown that more and more.
Yeah.
For all of us, for me, for everybody else, in any period of isolation, we need the body of Christ, not just in ways that make us feel good, in ways that sharpen us, and
sure,
but definitely all of the above.
Yeah.
We don't grow on our own in a corner. We just don't.
Indeed. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks for being our coffee convo tonight,
Glad
Kris.
Thanks for having me.
Christopher J. Carlson.
Yeah.
Is it a J?
It's a J. John, John.
J-O-H-N.
J-O-H-N.
Kris John Carlson. I did know the John at one point.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, y'all, for being with us for Coffee Convos, for jumping in, asking great questions. See you next week at 7:30.